Welcome to the Golf Improvement Podcast, episode 54.
Welcome to the podcast for golf lovers and enthusiasts who are looking to take their games to new heights. Dedicated to custom club fitting, short game improvement, and effective practice to improve your golf game. This is the Golf Improvement Podcast with your host, Tony Wright.
Hello, this is Tony Wright from Game Improvement Golf in Oak Ridge, Tennessee with the Golf Improvement Podcast, dedicated to bringing you useful information on custom club fitting, short game improvement, and effective practice techniques to take your game to new heights. At least for me, this is going to be a very busy week. I'm finishing a set of irons for a client, a brand new driver for a new friend I met who has about 105 mile an hour swing speed, and it was really great to go through that fitting with him. And I'm building a set of Sterling iron single length demo shafts and head, and some really cool new putter test clubs that I'll talk about a little later. But I also have one or two other things that I'm not going to talk about right now that I'll mention hopefully in my blog next week. But busy. But related to those putters, I wanted to also say thanks to Bob Ubelor, one of my custom club fitting friends who makes putters. He made some demo putter heads for me, and I'll talk more about that in a week or so. And I'm also very excited that Rob Gibb, who is a Sam Putt Lab senior putting instructor, and Rob did a podcast with me about, I guess, a month or two ago, shortly after PGA show. Well, he's relocating to Austin, Texas, and driving down from upstate New York. Actually, I'm recording this on Sunday, and he'll be here in Oak Ridge tomorrow, and we're going to have dinner together. And I really appreciated him taking the time to do that on his way down, and we're going to have a great time. I enjoyed this interview with John Dranschak from Dead Solid Perfect Golf Clubs in Sunbury, Ohio, and I know you will too. John is like a lot of my custom club fitting friends. He absolutely loves helping golfers play their best. But I've also just watched for a number of years, and he's like a sponge for information. He is always looking to improve what he does. And I think some of that comes out in this podcast interview. So I hope you enjoy it. Here it is. Hello, this is Tony Wright with the Golf Improvement Podcast. My guest today is a good friend, John Dranschak, a custom club fitter and owner of Dead Solid Perfect Golf Clubs in Sunbury, Ohio. John was recently named the International Clubmakers Guild Midwest Clubmaker of the Year. And, you know, John, I guess we've known each other, 6 or 7 years from going to AGCP meetings and going to the PGA show and things like that. Pretty much that kind of time frame, right?
Yeah, it's been great.
Oh yeah, we've had a lot of good times together, and in good learning environments and stuff. So I'm looking forward to this today. So if you don't mind, this is always fun for me because I always find out something about somebody that I don't know. But if you'd sort of talk about your story, how you first got excited about being a professional club fitter, and how you kind of learned the craft. So
sure, and Tony, it's good to be here. I'm a lefty, so that right there says a lot about the availability of golf clubs back in the mid-'80s. And so I'd go into the golf store and I'd look around and look for the lefties, and there'd be like two sets clear in the back in the corner, right next to the two lady sets.
Yeah.
And so one day a catalog shows up in my mail from a company called Golfsmith, and I start looking at it, and actually they had some club heads in there, and so and there were some left-handed stuff, so I bought a book from them about how to build golf clubs, and I ordered some stuff, and that's how I got started.
Yeah.
And then several years later, probably around 2000, I said, what am I going to do when I retire? and I thought, well, I'll build golf clubs. So I got involved with the organizations. I read everything there was to read on the Wish-On forums. I went to Mitchell and took a repair class. I just got into anything and everything I could about learning how to do club fitting properly, and joined the PCS before it went away, and been a member of the AGCP. So I've and also the International Club Makers Guild. So it took me almost 10 years before I felt like it was time, and I opened the shop in 2010.
10 years, and that's a consistent story with lots of people. It takes time, right? It's not easy to learn what you need to learn.
Yeah, I made a few mistakes along the way.
Yeah, we won't tell all of those, right? Because then I'd have to talk about mine. Well, and I'll be truthful. I've kind of, just personally watched you. You've always been excited about what you do. You're always looking to improve and learn and things like that. Can you talk about from an overall learning standpoint, what are some of the most important things you learned about fitting in the last couple of years that have helped you to really improve what you do?
I guess the one thing I learned, maybe not in the last couple of years, but early on, was everybody's different. And don't exclude certain things just because the person doesn't fit the pattern. And an example of that was I was fitting indoors on a TrackMan and at a friend of mine's studio, and I had a guy with about a 90-mile-an-hour driver swing speed, and I was having trouble getting his spin down. And my friend suggested, he said, "Why don't you try this Fujikura shaft?" He said, "I've had good luck with it." And it was a Tour Stiff.
Yeah.
And I said, "Man, that's pretty stiff." He goes, "Just try it." So we put it in the R15 head we were testing with, and sure enough, he was hitting it good. Spin came right in line. And I asked him, I said, "How does it feel?" He goes, "It feels great." Now, I probably would have never put him in that shaft. And so I learned a little bit right there. And the other thing I think I've learned is that there are certain swing types and certain people that just don't fit the mold. And they're and I see that time and again. And the other thing I learned is you can't fit a bad golf swing.
That's a hard one, isn't it? I mean, it really is, because you want so much for somebody. You know what it's like when it really works, right?
Yes. I'll give you this example. I had a young man, and his dad wanted to get him fit for clubs really bad. He wanted to get him into golf. And so his dad goes away, he was a sophomore in college, and he's swinging, and I had we were doing drivers, and he was turning his hands over so bad that he put a dent in the top of the driver. And I had to tell his dad, I said, and he agreed. He goes, "My dad thinks I'm better than I am." Yeah, and I had to tell his dad, maybe we ought to do lessons before we get fit. And he did, and he improved a lot, and we got him in a set, and he's good to go.
Yeah. Well, they appreciate the honesty, right?
I think so. Yeah. Sometimes it's hard, and I try to put it in in terms of that. It would be better for the golfer to work on his swing a little bit. That way, we'll get a better fit.
Yeah. That's great. Boy, hitting the top of the club. Oh, boy.
Yeah,
I've
got that in the shop. Sometime when we get together, I'll show it to you.
You still got it. It's got a big dent, huh?
Yeah, right out on the toe. I mean, it just creased it right.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So,
yeah. That's neat. Oh,
yeah,
well, neat in I don't know if it's a little perverted way, but you got to tell people the truth. So yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, as it turned out, it's a neat story that the boy was able to get his swing down, and I talked to his teacher, and he understood, and so he came back, and he was a much improved golfer.
Yeah. That's great. Well, now, when we first talked about doing this, you suggested something that, most times I don't think we talk about, and that's the importance of, fitting, at least between us and other fitters. We know there's a lot of art and everything to fitting, but there's a lot of craftsmanship to building clubs to match what you actually found that worked. I think you want to talk a little bit about that, if you would, please.
Yeah, I had a conversation yesterday with a guy who I'm building a set of mirrors for, and he was asking me a lot of questions about how I build it and everything, and he dabbles in doing some of his own stuff, like regripping and whatnot, but and he said, well, what if you just, plug them, as he called it, in other words, glue them together, and I'll just take them and regrip them. And I go, well, I can sell you a set of mirrors that won't perform if that's what you want. I mean,
for $250-ish plus or something a club, right?
Yeah, $275.
Right. Yeah, right.
I said I don't let anything out of the shop that I don't think is perfect, and I said I can sell you I can buy the best club heads and shafts, and I can sell you a set that absolutely will not work. So I do my thing. We know what the target is, and I make sure that I hit the target as close as I can before anything goes out the shop. And the reason I do that is because people come back to me and say these are the best feeling set of clubs, not just one club, but all the clubs in the set that I've ever had. And so I know that the build is important, because I've seen the opposite of it when I've seen some OEM clubs that come in and they're all over the map. So I think that's probably the second piece of the puzzle, the fitting, and then you have to back the fitting up with the proper build so that the golfer can get the most out of the clubs that you're building, because they're spending good money, whether it's a Wishon or a Mura, and they deserve the best build that I can give them.
Yeah, it's just not like slapping it all together, if it was that easy. And the other end of it is, if you see small differences in making changes when you do a fitting, well, you gotta be able to build the clubs to what those small changes were, right?
Yeah, I mean, if I add some lead tape or something to a head and it changes the swing weight and the MOI, what the first thing I do when I'm done with the fitting and the customer gives me the go ahead is I'll bring that club into the shop and I'll spec it out completely so that I know what my targets are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I use the Club Connects system, so it's easy to put it, spec it out, and I know all the weights and everything, so I can build the set when I'm ready.
I had a 110 mile an hour guy yesterday. I don't usually get those guys, but I'm still using FastFit for a lot of drivers, and that stuff still holds up. It's pretty good. The system works, You're using Unifit with some of the drivers too, aren't you?
I'm using Unifit, and that works very well. In fact, it was kind of neat because I was working with a professional the other day, and I was using Unifit, and with his driver, I was able to use his driver and change some different shafts, and we tried some things, and actually he had the right shaft in his driver. I mean, he was maxed out with his swing speed.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is I changed heads on him, and with his shaft, and he actually liked the second head better, and he went out and found one.
Yeah.
I was hoping he'd buy it from me, but he found he knew the TaylorMade rep, so he got an old demo that he had for probably less than what I could sell it to him for.
Yeah. And just to be sure, people listening, some people won't know what Unifit is. Maybe a lot do, but Unifit's a connection system so you can create a test shaft and put it in a essentially any OEM club, like a Cobra, TaylorMade, whatever, so that you don't have to have separate shafts for separate heads. It was a very unique invention by Eric Birch.
Yes, and it works. The only problem is you got to make sure. Like I found out, there's the Tour Edge driver this year. They didn't make the hosel wide enough to be able to take the Unifit adapter.
Okay.
So
you have to make some adjustments,
Yes, but they know that. They said they just made a mistake, and they said next year they'll fix it.
Yeah.
Which tells me that Unifit is a force to be reckoned with in the market. It works, and people are paying attention to it.
Yeah. Well, now talk a little bit, John, about what is your favorite kind of fitting? I mean, do you enjoy one or the other? Do you enjoy irons more or drivers? And maybe talk a little bit, about your process for that type.
Well, drivers are always fun, especially if someone's not fit very well for their driver, and you can get them 10, 20 yards, which I see a lot of the time. So that's always fun when you see the look on their face when they know they're hitting it well past where they normally would, and a lot of that is due to loft changes, because just about every amateur has too low a loft in their drivers.
Yeah.
It's kind of neat to see just how much changing the loft on a head and putting a shaft that's going to fit that driver's swing character or that golfer's swing characteristics, how much the numbers change and how much better they can hit the ball. And irons, I really get excited with being able to show people the flight scope and the data on grouping, because when you get the right head and shaft, and all of a sudden that circle becomes very, very small, and they're essentially landing the ball in a much tighter pattern than they were, especially with the better golfers. Their eyes light up. But actually, my favorite fitting is putter fitting.
And I didn't know you were doing much of that. But so I'm looking forward to hearing what you're saying. So,
well, I'll give you an example. I had a guy this weekend, and he's a 2 handicap, and he said he could probably be a plus handicap if he could putt.
Yeah.
And so we went into the shop, and I've got a putting green there and some equipment, and he had a Scotty Cameron and an Odyssey putter. And the first thing I noticed was neither putter fit him in terms of lie. The one was toe up and the other one was heel up, and so we made some adjustments. And I have a roll board which can show you how your ball is rolling. It's a felt board that leaves a pattern when the ball is hit. And he needed more loft on his putter. He had a downward angle of attack. And so we adjusted that, and then I always do the eye position where it's over, whether they're inside the ball or over the ball.
Yeah.
He was pretty good there. And then I always do the aim position. And I learned a while ago that you don't aim them down to the hole on the same side of the mat that the edge near the edge, because they'll use the edge to line it up.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah, you've got to get visually away from things that can steer you. Yeah.
So I have him putt across from.
Okay.
And from the right side of the mat to the left hole, and I could see right away that he was aimed about 8 inches to a foot, not a foot, 8 inches or so, 6 to 8 inches to the left, and I showed him with my laser where he was aimed, and I said, you've got to retrain your mind so that when you're looking at the hole, you're going to when you're aimed at the hole, that's what you want to see.
Yeah.
And I said it takes some time, and then I talked to him about putters, and I gave him a Seymour, and I showed him how they're face balanced at impact and whatnot, and he started putting with it, and he started putting great. I mean, he had improved his putting with his putters, but all of a sudden when he got that Seymour in his hand, it's like, wow. And he goes, and he started putting, 2 or 3 balls with that, then 2 or 3 balls with his. And he goes, I can just feel the difference as to how stable this putter is.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, well, I gave him a price. And he said, well, let me think about it.
Yeah, let me think about it. I'm aiming 8
Yeah.
inches left, and I've got to. Yeah, it's interesting, right? Okay.
So-
and he bought a Scotty already, which well.
Yeah. But the thing about it is it wasn't 4 hours later he sends me an email and says, go ahead and order the putter.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I mean, that's because what I like about that is people tell me it made an immediate impact on my game and I'll to wrap this up, I'll give you a story about one of my Mura customers who had 2 Mura putters, and he said, I'm not putting well. And so we went out and did a fitting, and he goes, I got to get this putter fast because I'm heading out to Kansas City to play my friend's member guest. And so I rushed the putter to him. It was a Seymour Mallet. He was putting real well with it. I used 100-gram back weight, which he liked.
Yeah.
In all his putters. And he a week later he calls me up and he says, I got back from Kansas City. He goes, I didn't play very well the first day, but the last day I made every putt I looked at, and we wound up tied at the end, and I chipped one in the chip off, and we won the thing. And he goes, that putter was amazing. He goes, everything I looked at the last day inside of 10 feet I made.
Wow. Well, it's just people being able to walk off the green and not feel frustrated by their putting has to affect,
Yes.
everything,
and,
right?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I see a lot of people with distance problems, which you can really help them with back weighting. I found a lot of that, people with a 15-foot putt and they're 5 foot short and the next one's 5 foot past, is you can quiet them down and get them into a small circle right around the hole if you use the right back weight.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I always call it secret sauce.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it really is, and people don't understand it.
Colonel Sanders' secret ingredient. Right?
Yeah, Colonel John's secret ingredient. There you go. Well, I'm curious to hear a little bit, and you being a lefty, it's a little harder there too. What's going on in your world, in the world of the Sterling stuff and the single length stuff? Have you had some people come to you, or?
I have, and in fact, I have a guy who's going to be in the States from Thailand.
Huh. Yeah.
month of July, and he, I had a struggle because the Sterling heads are back ordered, so I'm probably not going to get those till the end of June. So I'm hoping we can meet his timetable. But yeah. I've had other people interested, and what I find is that you have to be careful. Because the tendency is when you get the same length iron, and you put a 4 or 5 iron in someone's hands, and it's that short, they have a tendency to want to swing it harder.
Yeah.
And then when they get the wedge, they're thinking, okay, if I hit this, it's going to go way over the green or way over my target. And so you have to get them to understand that you can't decelerate through the shot. You've just got to take your normal swing with each club. And that takes a little getting used to, I think. Even people who I've even talked to another club maker who built a set for himself, Bill Weitzel.
Yeah.
And he said he struggled with that as well.
Well, it's so different, that for anybody, it's got to take some getting used to. I would think so.
Well, and also, I don't think it's for everybody, because if you look at DeChambeau's swing, he's more of a Mo Norman, more upright swing, and I think that you get people who are maybe have very flat swings. It may not work. I mean, I haven't actually specifically worked with anybody like that yet, but it'll be interesting to see how many different types of golfers it appeals to and it actually works for.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to it too. I'm like you. I'm waiting on getting some heads, and I've had one demo head. I'm going to convert to a test head and get a bunch of shafts here pretty soon. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, it's let's face it. It's not. It was tried. I mean, back in the Tommy Armour days, but it wasn't executed properly. So it'll be interesting to see now if it takes off. Certainly, the concept of more consistency is very appealing to a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, John, you talked a little bit about at least one of your success stories. Can you share maybe one or two others that have really, from the standpoint of what the golfer achieved and your fun with it?
Yeah, I just had a guy last year called me up. He said he was 90 years old, played golf 3 times a week, and he didn't have a 150-yard club anymore.
Yeah.
And he said, it used to be he thought his 6-iron should go 150 yards. So we did a fitting. He was a very nice guy, loved golf, had a decent golf swing. I always, when I first do my fitting, I have them hit their 6-iron and their driver. And he was hitting his driver well. It was pretty well fit for him. And he was hitting that thing out to probably 175. And, if he got some roll, he could push it out close to 200.
Pretty good for a 90-year-old. I hope I can hit it like that.
Yeah, I hope I can hit it like that now. Yeah. But he had a set of pings with stiff shafts that were probably 15 years old.
Wow.
And he had about a 65 mile an hour swing speed with those. But he was only hitting them like 70 yards. And so I put him in a Wish-On 771 head, very forgiving, lots of weight in the bottom to get the ball up. And I put him in a 60-gram Acra shaft, or a 50-gram Acra shaft, I'm sorry.
Yeah, the I iron shaft or whatever.
Yeah, the I iron.
Right.
And he started carrying that ball about 125 yards, 130 yards. And, of course, with roll, he was getting close to where his target was. And he looked at me and he goes, "Now that's what I'm talking about." And so I built him a set, and about 3 weeks later, he sent me an email and said that the clubs were great. He felt like he was back to where he could play and keep up with his buddies when he was playing now with his irons. So that was a good story. And then probably my favorite story is a guy came to me from, he was probably 2.5 hours away up in Canton, Ohio. And he came to me and he said, "You're my last hope.
Obi-Wan, huh? Yeah, right.
Yeah,
right.
and I had not been. This was like only my second year in the business. This has been a little while ago, and he said, "I have a bad neck. I had surgery, and they were not able to accomplish everything they needed to, and I have no use of my right hand." And he was a right-handed golfer, so he said, I heard about these Jumbo Max grips, and he said, I want to see if I can get fit. He said, if you can't help me, it's okay, but I promised my son I'd try one more time to see if I can play because he wants to continue playing with me.
Yeah.
And so, and this guy was probably in his early 50s. And so we got out on the range, and I put him in a very, actually it was the Wishon 730 CL, so it's a modified set.
Yeah.
So it was mostly all woods and hybrids, and the driver was like 16 degrees loft. And so his wife and I kind of tag teamed him, and we went with those heads and very light shafts and the Jumbo Max grips, and she actually took a right-handed golf glove for the right hand, and she sewed Velcro on it. And what we found is we could he could hold the club. He could set the club in his hands and know where his hands were going to be, and then he could take the Velcro and wrap his right
to hold
around the Jumbo Max grip, and then he'd put his left hand on it, and he could swing, and he could hit the ball probably with the driver, probably 170 yards. And so he said he was gonna give it a shot. I built him the set, sent it to him, and I heard back about a year later that he said it's good. He goes, my wife is perfecting the glove thing, and he said I'm playing, and so I forgot about it, and all of a sudden his name popped into my mind last year, and so I sent him an email and I said, "Are you still playing golf?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, things are good." He goes, I can play to where I think my ability will lets me. In other words, I'm playing as good a golf as I think my physical handicap will let me, and I'm satisfied with that. So that was a really good story. I mean, I really, those are the kind of stories that make you feel good, that you can help somebody who's about ready to give up the game to have them be able to continue to enjoy it, especially the fact that his son was
enjoying playing with him still and
yes.
stuff. Yeah. And you were being a little out of the box too, like you said, right? I mean, it wasn't just sort of a standard approach, right?
Yeah, I mean, you have to. I mean, I've had, when you're fitting anybody from 5 years old to 90 years old with all different kinds of problems, you have to be open-minded. And I mean, every time I do a fitting, I learn something new.
Yeah. That's fun though. That's a good thing for retirement, right? Or pseudo retirement.
Well, that's why those. I mean, I'm not in this business to become a millionaire. I'm in this business to enjoy it and be able to help people improve their golf game. That's my goal, and it's very satisfying. And let's face it, it beats going out and trying to be a salesman and beating your head against the wall like I used to do. Yeah.
Well, this has been a great interview, John. I appreciate it. If you have any final words you want to say to golfers about fitting, and any particular things you suggest that they do to help them play their best, go ahead.
Well, I guess my final comments are: find a good independent club fitter and go get fit. Fittings fittings don't take 20 minutes hitting a few clubs into a simulator. Get someone who you feel comfortable with and let them do their thing, and I think you'll play better golf, you'll be more satisfied, and you'll have that feeling that you're not ready to turn in that set of irons next year because you're not hitting them as well as you thought you would. It's just really important. Everybody from the top players in the world on down need to be fit, and they do get fit. I mean, the top players in the world get extra special treatment, and any golfer can get that treatment if they find a good club fitter.
Yeah. Well, John, that's a great way to end. So I'm going to put some links to Dead Solid Perfect Golf Clubs and John Dranschak in the show notes. And as I mentioned when we were offline, maybe I'll quit messing up when I drive through Sunbury around Thanksgiving time and give you a call and come by and see your shop. It would be fun.
Yes, you're certainly welcome anytime. I'd love to show it to you.
And thanks for taking the time doing this today. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.
Taking your game to new heights. www.gameimprovementgolf.com.
Well, thanks, John, for sharing some of your knowledge about custom club fitting and also some of your successes. Check out the show notes for a link to John Dranschak and to Dead Solid Perfect Golf Clubs in Sunbury, Ohio. Well, that's it for today. In 2 weeks, you'll have to wait to find out who my interview will be with then. But trust me, you're going to enjoy it. And then right after that, it's off to Oakmont for the U.S. Open. I can't wait. See you in 2 weeks.
Game Improvement Golf, your source of information and inspiration to become an exceptional golfer now. www.gameimprovementgolf.com